Hello everyone, this is Tim. I'm just making a quick video here for you about exam number one. And all I'm going to do here is just kind of go through really quickly and talk about what I consider to be ideal answers to to the questions on the exam. I've studied with a bunch of you, but I figured there's been a lot of people in the class who have not approached me or asked questions of me, and maybe for whatever reason, and I'm expecting that there's some people who may have questions about the exam that otherwise wouldn't get any time to review it with me. So I thought I could make just a quick video here and kind of run it down a little bit. If there's anything here you want me to kind of elaborate on a little bit more, or if you want to discuss your answers and the kind of partial credit that you received on these, please reach out to me. Like I'm always saying, I'd love to talk to you about it. I'm not unhappy talking about answers on exams with students. In fact, I've had plenty of debates with students about their scores, and I'm open to that. I don't think of it as automatically disrespectful. So I hope you'll get some help with this. It's also going to be good to review for the sake of the makeup exam. I generally really encourage students to not take the makeup exam blind. By that I mean you take the first exam, you see the partial credit that you got, and then just go and take the makeup exam. I recommend talking with me and double checking with me, at least checking in to see if there's something else that we should talk about to get you ready for the makeup and making the most out of that opportunity. So again, get in touch with me. Okay, so let's just start running down the list here. Some evaluative terms can describe at the same time that they evaluate. That statement is true. It's telling me I'm not connected to the internet. That's fine. This is the so-called thick concepts that I was talking about in my lectures, like the invasion of Iraq versus the liberation of Iraq. Those words, invasion, liberation, and other words like them, these other thick concepts, do descriptive work and normative work simultaneously. Here we go. If an argument has true premises and a true conclusion, the argument is valid. This is false. I was talking when we were talking about validity, about how the actual truth or falsity of the premises and the conclusion is not relevant for determining the argument's validity. Validity is all about what's possibly true, not about what is actually true. It's about whether validity is asking whether it's possible for the claims in the argument to have for all the premises to be true at the same time that the conclusion is false. If such a thing is possible, then the argument is invalid. It's basically saying it has a bad support relation. The truth of the premises does not guarantee the truth of the conclusion, even if they are true. Okay, meaning of the words we say depends on convention. That's true. The truth of the words that we say does not depend on convention, but the meaning, like the linguistic meaning of the words, definitely depends on convention. Remember how all linguistic meaning is built out of the linguistic act level of meaning, which is purely a matter of conventions of semantics and syntax. So that's where everything begins with language. To successfully communicate, one must be sure not to violate the Gricean maxims. That's false. We violate Gricean maxims every time we are engaging in conversational implication, and we definitely rely on conversational implication as a way to successfully communicate. So it is okay. You can successfully communicate and violate Gricean maxims at the same time. I will say this. Gricean maxims, if they are violated, definitely opens up the possibility for misunderstanding. But remember, conversational implication is like all a matter of making sense of something that initially looks weird, and sometimes we can recover from it. So that's false. Most of the time we recover from it, actually. Okay, whenever someone makes more than one claim, they make an argument. That is false. A whole sequence of claims is just a manifesto. It's not necessarily an argument. Remember, an argument is what's happening whenever someone defends the truth of one claim by making other claims. So every time there's a support relation, when you're putting the truth of one thing based on other truths, then you've got an argument. But that's not just that's something a little bit more than just making multiple claims. It's making a claim on the basis of another claim. Arguing as a conversational act is always about getting someone else to think the way that you do. False, false, false. I really hope you put false. This is the thing I've been sort of emphasizing from the beginning of the quarter about how arguing as an act, as an action that we engage with, can be done for the purpose of truth seeking, for the purpose of understanding, and not just a matter of trying to convert the entire rest of the world into your way of thinking. Arguing does advocate on behalf of a view, but remember, we're talking about a conversational act. The purpose, the effect or intended effect of speaking, which is about purposes and intentions. And while I may be arguing, and what that is doing at the level of a speech act is defending a position or advocating for a position, my ultimate goal might be, through doing that, I will be able to test those ideas and see if they're actually false, and leave the debate with a better idea than the one that I started. So the ultimate purpose might not be just a matter of getting everyone else to think like me, but instead might be to figure out what I ought to think. So this is definitely false. Asserting a conditional is an argument because the antecedent supports the consequent. This is false. Conditionals are not arguments, and antecedents are not being affirmed, and consequents are not being affirmed by conditional. Remember, a conditional is hypothetical. If A, then B. Not A is true, B is true because of A, or something like that. It doesn't work like that. A conditional is just a single claim, and as a single claim it cannot be an argument, because an argument is a claim supporting another claim. So, alright, so moving on here. 8, 9, 10, and 11 are going to have a couple different parts to them, and I'll try to just talk through this quickly. There's a couple other things where I might actually break out the scratch paper, and we'll have to go through it a little bit more, but I'm going to try to do these quickly. This is not an argument. This is just like saying, this is like a conditional claim. If you do well on this test, then your grade will improve. So not an argument. This one, 9, is an argument. The conclusion is something like, pirates are not better than ninjas, or something like that. Anything in the ballpark I'm pretty happy with here. There's a bunch of different premises to separate, though. Pirates are always diseased. Pirates are conspicuous. I don't know what you want to do with that one. Sometimes arguments have claims that you may not know exactly what the person has in mind, but you still have to diagram them anyway. And that's definitely one of the points that they're making here, that pirates are conspicuous. And pirates are bad friends. And if you also brought in the extra claim here that a ninja makes a good friend, then you've got a gold star on this one, because that's definitely another claim that's happening, even though it's being made with very suggestive language. There's conversational implication going on here, but that claim is present. All right, 10 is also an argument. Can it be doubted that Nicolas Cage is the finest actor of our generation? I can't doubt it. Here the conclusion is Nicolas Cage is the finest actor of our generation, or if you're like, this person is being a little dramatic, you might just say Nicolas Cage is a very good actor. Whichever way I would have been fine with. And then this is another part where here we go. Just jumped around. This is another case where I used some informal language in order to make you have to think about the meaning and rewrite things in standard form a little bit to exercise some creative license for the purposes of clarity. So here I think the premises would look something like, Nicolas Cage does a very good job with emotional commitment to his acting. This is kind of combining it's breathtaking part with all these, because these are not claims. Just look at his emotional commitment. What's the speaker saying about Nicolas Cage's emotional commitment? Well, it's breathtaking. Okay, so probably the easier way we could say this is something like, Nicolas Cage has a good emotional commitment to his acting, or something like that. Nicolas Cage has an awesome, awkward swagger. Nicolas Cage flawlessly delivers some really bad scripts, lines in really bad scripts, something like that. That'd be fine with me. They've got those 3 different premises for the conclusion. Question 11 is not an argument. This is actually another conditional statement. The speaker is not saying that you should have gotten a dog. This is just a way of them illustrating what cats are like. That if you tried to treat a cat like a dog, then it would be sort of unresponsive to that. That's all it's really saying. There's not really a claim that's being made here that's being defended on the grounds of some other claim. So that's not an argument. All right. 12 and 13 are arguments. You just need to get all the suppressed premises in here. So with question 12, the explicit conclusion is that it would not be good to drink that punch. I had some answers that said, don't drink the punch, but that's a command, and commands cannot be true or false. So we have to word it like a claim that could be true or false, like it's not good to drink that punch, or it wouldn't be good to drink the punch. What are the premises that we got? Well, explicitly, we've got Nick had a couple drinks of the punch. That's one thing. And the other thing would be Nick is now naked and rolling in the grass in the backyard singing show tunes to himself. That's another premise that we've got. What is needed here in order to make the conclusion follow from the premises being offered? Because right now it's a terrible argument. Those premises don't really prove at all that the conclusion is true, stated explicitly. So what else needs to happen here? Well, there's two things. There are two suppressed premises in this problem. One of them is that the punch is causing Nick's behavior. And that's a much better way of putting things than something like the punch is spiked or there's alcohol in the punch. You don't know exactly what's in there. But if this argument is going to make sense, there needs to be a connection between the fact that Nick had some of the punch and what his current behavior is. The other thing that's needed in order to get to this conclusion that it wouldn't be good to drink the punch would be that Nick's behavior is undesirable, something like that. Like it isn't good that Nick is naked and rolling in the grass in the backyard singing show tunes to himself. If that's a good thing, then maybe I want to drink the punch. I'm like, let me have some of what he's having. It's great. So if these things are being offered, if Nick's behavior and the fact that he had some of the punch are being offered as a reason to not drink the punch, then that behavior has to be a bad thing, something you'd want to avoid. So those are the two suppressed premises: the causal connection, that the punch is causing Nick's behavior, and that Nick's behavior is bad. All right, in 13, the conclusion is the keys to the car must be locked inside. Premises are I don't have the keys and you don't have the keys. Those are the two explicit premises that we get. But the suppressed premise here is there's just one this time. This is just a process of elimination problem. So it'd be important to also have here not just that I don't have them and you don't have them, but that there are three places the keys could be: with you, with me, or in the car. So that's what we need there for 13. Oh, pardon me for yawning. It's a little late. It's 6 o'clock. Oh, that tells you what my life is like these days. Okay. All right, question 14, matching. Avoid ambiguity. That's manner. Don't assert what you know is false. That is quality. Be brief. Manner. Make your contribution as informative as is required. Quantity. Be orderly. Manner. Be relevant. Relevance. Don't assert what you don't have adequate evidence for. That is quality. Don't make your contribution more informative than is required. Quantity. And avoid obscurity of expression. Manner. There we go. And here we go. Linguistic act is when we speak in a way that expresses something meaningful in a language. That's in the linguistic act. Speech act is the action performed by speaking, and the conversational act is the effect or intended effect of speaking. All right. Now on to the longer ones. All right, so question 16. Then I'll see you in hell. Now it's important. Some of you did not analyze only the underlined section, but started analyzing what's going on with the deckhand. These other parts here, the non-underlined sections, are just provided as context. So I'm only asking you to explain just this one utterance. What is Han Solo communicating here when he says, "Then I'll see you in hell"? That's it. So let's go through the questions. The literal meaning here is something like, under those circumstances, I will perceive you in the afterlife that bad people go to. Something like that. Robot speak, the more robotic, the better. The speech act, I mean, if that's the message that's happening at the literal meaning, then the speech act, what's being done by conveying that message, would, I think, the best answer here is predicting. He's making a claim about the future, and that's what we call prediction. So he's making a prediction. I will perceive. It's kind of like, well, I'll see you on Tuesday. Will you? I mean, do I know that? I guess if I'm claiming that, I'm making a prediction. Okay, question 3. What's the implied meaning? Something like, I don't care, I'm going anyway. I think is what is the best answer here for the implied meaning. And the conversational act, what's the action that's being done by passing that message along? Dismissing the warning. So the deckhand is basically warning him that he shouldn't go out there because it's dangerous, and Han Solo is like, I don't care. Which is basically, in terms of how would you describe that with a verb, what is he doing? He's dismissing the warning. Disregarding it, something like that. Okay, how's the implication being generated? Again, you got to walk me through the breach, the resolution, talk about Gricean maxims, and background assumptions. Those are the 4 components I was talking about in my video lectures as the best way to give full, complete answers for explaining how implication is generated. And the problem here is that there's a quality violation. That's the main Gricean maxim that's getting violated. On actually both counts of quality, there's no way I believe that Han Solo has the evidence to make his prediction. Like, how does he know that he'll see the deckhand in hell? That relies on a lot of information that he doesn't have access to, and he probably does not have adequate evidence for. Does anyone have adequate evidence? Well, maybe some people might argue you have some adequate evidence for believing that hell exists, but what about that we know that anyone's going there? I mean, unless there's a lot of other things going on here in the context, that's unlikely. But that's not even to the main point here. The main point is that I can't believe that Han Solo really believes what he is sort of saying. That the way he's posturing here is what he really authentically is motivated by. Then he's like, okay, then I'll die. Okay, cool. I can't. That doesn't seem reasonable. So there must be something else going on here. So that's a quality violation. I don't believe that Han Solo is representing his attitudes accurately. I think he's lying in a sort of fakey sort of way here. He's joking. He's not just like, okay, I'm going to hell, sweet. That would be totally unreasonable. Hell is like eternal damnation and torment. That's not a fun place. That's not something to just accept flippantly. So what's going on? So if that's the problem, the implied meaning that we put in there, I don't care about the danger, I'm going anyway, that's far more reasonable. So even if going to hell just flippantly is unreasonable, heading out and risking your life in order to save a friend, that could be reasonable. That could be reasonable. That's something someone might do. So that solves the problem. That solves the quality breach. And we talked about the Gricean maxim here that is violated. So why did we pick this meaning? So this is where background assumptions might fit in. Well, hell sucks. That's one thing. Otherwise, I wouldn't have seen this as something weird. That he would be like, all right, I'll go to hell. Fine. It's not like paying a fee for not paying your bill on time or something. Oh, okay, fine. I guess I'll just pay the bill. It's not something like that. So that's some background assumptions that's relevant here. I mean, knowing that people might actually risk life and limb for their friends, that's like a reasonable course of action. Some people sincerely believe that they would be willing to do that. That might be also some important background assumptions here. Okay, so that's 16. 17, I think I'm in love. Literal meaning, I speculate I'm in the emotional state of infatuation or something like that. What's the speech act? Maybe something like reporting on their inner emotional life. Maybe expressing emotion, that'd be fine too. Nothing much more here. In fact, it's kind of a negative answer. One thing they're not doing is answering the question at the level of the speech act. The implied meaning, I think, is something like, the date went great. And that would make the conversational act something like answering the question. So at the speech act level, not answering the question, but at the conversational act level, answering the question. Okay, how's the implication generated? Well, the Gricean maxim that's getting violated here is relevance. Talking about their emotional states does not answer the question. It's not directly. So this isn't a relevant response to being asked the question. When someone asks you a question like this, relevant responses would be like, it went great, it went bad, I'm not sure, it was so-so, I'm not going to tell you. Those are all like relevant responses. And this is the response they gave literally does not factor into one of those responses. So saying the date went great would be a relevant response, so that would be the way to see the breach getting resolved. But why do we pick that one? What background assumptions are needed here in order to see I think I'm in love as meaning something like it went well? I think the biggest and simplest way to put this, the biggest background assumption that's helpful, and the most direct way to answer this would be just that falling in love would be a success condition for a date. That's like one of the ways that dates can go well. That's a background assumption that I take for granted in interpreting this answer. Okay, 18. 18 is a little tricky. A lot of people got this one wrong. And this is the one that I was alluding to in my video lectures. I was trying to give a warning about, saying that if you're not confident about the implied meaning, you might actually try to use the Gricean analysis to give you some clues. Sometimes trying to figure out what Gricean maxim is getting violated will actually help you piece together the story of the implication. So let's go through it. The literal meaning is something like Davy. However, you can refer to me through the nomenclature Dr. Young, something like that. And the speech act would be my favorite answer for speech act here is something like introducing himself, something like that. So I like that. I think that's the most straightforward, simple answer, gets to the point. If you had something like requesting, though, or commanding, or something like that, that'd be fine too, because of this phrase here. He's like telling him how he wants to be referred to. The implied meaning is where things get a little tricky here. I think the implied meaning is something like, I'm better than you, or we're not social peers, or you need to show me respect as my inferior, or something like that. And so if that's the meaning that Davy's trying to communicate, then the conversational act would be something like putting Jason in his place, or asserting his superiority, or something along those lines. Anything in that territory, I would have been cool with. And this is one where I have heard some other answers that I've been willing to give credit for. They're a little more of a stretch than the one that I just offered in terms of interpreting the situation. But I have accepted some other answers here too. But I think this is the one that is most strongly indicated. And why? Well, here's the clues we got. Gricean maxim violations. For one thing, there's a manner violation. We don't often randomly emphasize words like in the middle of a sentence. We don't just say words like really loudly, just randomly. That's weird. Davy, but you can call me Dr. Young, right? That's a weird emphasis there. So that's an obscure way of speaking. So that's a manner violation. But more importantly, there's a quantity violation here. Davy is giving far too much information to answer Jason's question. A lot of you said that the implied meaning was something like he wants to be called Dr. Young. But if that was really his implied meaning, if that's his whole purpose in speaking, is to indicate that he wants to be referred to as Dr. Young, then there's a far more efficient way to do this. He could have just said, Dr. Young. I'm Jason. What's your name? Dr. Young. Boom. Mission accomplished. If he wants to be referred to as Dr. Young, there you go. So why does he tell Jason that his name is Davy if he doesn't want to be called Davy? That's the perplexing riddle here. That's the mystery of question 18. Is why too much information? There must be some other purpose here that makes this the right amount of information. That somehow it's important for Davy to communicate to Jason what his name is that he shouldn't be called. And this emphasis on doctor. So those are our clues. The manner violation and the quantity violation that's happening here. So how do we get this bridge? Oh, pardon me again. How do we get this bridge from the extra information to something like I'm better than you, or we are not social peers, or something like that? Well, there's a couple things. One, Davy is trying to kind of rub Jason's face in the fact that his name is Davy, but Jason can't call him that. That's the reason for giving him the information, is to sort of show a way of contrast here of like, well, that's what my friends would call me, but you can call me Dr. Young, or something like that, right? The emphasis on the doctor uses the background information here that some people think that things like being a doctor, that kind of status, makes them better. So I think the background assumption here is not that maybe that's appropriate, but just that some people think this way. Like, I know that some people think this way. Some people are arrogant about their credentials in this sort of fashion. That I'm ready for it. If someone does it, I would be able to use that to inform me in interpreting what Davy is up to if I was Jason, and to see what he is trying to get across. Okay, so that's question 18. If you got more questions about that, let me know. I'm happy to answer them. All right, now we've got the big long section here where you had to annotate, put arguments into standard form, and then diagram them. So let's just knock the annotations out of the way first here. Okay, we all know that's assuring. It's kind of like saying obviously or something like that. We all know deep down that we want our education to surprise us with its knowledge, to dazzle our imagination in intoxicating catharsis of intellectual ecstasy. That is all nothing. A lot of people put evaluative terms here, but remember, if you're going to mark something in evaluative term, that means you're saying the speaker is saying that it's a good thing or a bad thing. Remember the, and that's a good thing, or the, and that's a bad thing, little thing. And that's not happening here. Certainly in context, the speaker is not really siding with these claims themselves, and it doesn't actually play any role in the argument. This is just kind of like setting the stage. It's like, so you know how people think this? Well, but, right, discounting. This is what I think is really true. That's kind of the rhetorical situation that's happening here. So but's discounting. While creating this experience in a student can, guarding, motivate them on a temporary basis, I think is also guarding on a temporary basis. We should avoid. I would say the best way to do this would be to say should avoid is E negative. Telling someone they should or should not do something, or that it's right or wrong, or appropriate or inappropriate, that's an evaluative claim. That's a normative claim. So should avoid, that's probably E negative. We should do that. Repeated emphasis of the expectation for this. Since, reason marker, very important, reason marker. That can, whoa, there we go. Can is guarding. Render students insensitive, that's probably an E negative there. To the sometimes crucial, I would say E positive. But, I mean, this is, I don't know how much, if you mark this discounting, that's okay. This one's kind of on the fence for me. Less exciting resources for insight. Insight's definitely E positive. Okay, so those are the annotations. And by the way, some of these things are, I don't grade all of them equally. Some of them are trickier, like this but, discounting, take it or leave it. That's not a big deal to me. But something like since, an explicit argument marker like this, that one is going to be worth more points. So when I was kind of deciding how much partial credit, there's some easier things to catch and there's some harder things to catch. And I looked more at the more obvious ones for figuring out the points. And then if you got some of the weirdo ones, then I definitely would reward that, but I wasn't going to mark it off as much. Okay, that happens a little bit more here with this one. There's some tricky ones in here to catch, but I didn't weigh them as heavily. Thus is a conclusion marker for Scherzes. Big conclusion marker. To sum up our discussion of the value of philosophy, don't put value as an E positive here, because he's not making any claim here about the value of philosophy. He's just talking about the subject matter we're talking about. Here is where the evaluation happens. Philosophy is to be studied. Is to be is sort of a more archaic bit of speech here, but is to be is really like saying it should be studied. So that means it's E positive. This is something to mark as E positive. Is to be. Not for the sake of any definite answers to its questions, since, reason marker. No definite answers can, as a rule, assuring. This is a tricky one, as a rule. But he doesn't tell us the rule, just that there is one. So what is it? There must be something. That's assuring. No definite answers can, as a rule, be known to be true, but discounting. Rather, for the sake of the questions themselves. Because, reason marker, these questions can, guarding. And then I would say there's a bunch of evaluative terms coming up here in the next few phrases, but I think enlarge is a E positive. Enrich certainly is. And then diminish the dogmatic. I think dogmatic as E negative is probably the best way to handle this. Assurance, which closes the mind against speculation. If you had closes the mind as E negative, that would make sense to me too. And then we have a whole string of things in a row, real fast. But discounting. Above all is assuring. Above all, it's sort of like saying this is a really important reason. Trust me, really important. Get ready for it. It's huge. That's expressing confidence. That implies backup reasons without providing them through conversational implications. So that's an assuring one, but that's a tricky one to catch. And then because is a reason marker. And then through the greatness, greatness is not evaluative because it's just saying it's big. Through the greatness of the universe which philosophy contemplates, the mind also is rendered great. That is E positive. Mind is rendered good. And makes possible, that's guarding, that union with the universe which constitutes its highest good, or good, as E positive, definitely. Okay, now let's talk about how to put these into standard form and diagram them. So with this first one about education, like I was saying, this first sentence is totally irrelevant, doesn't have anything going on. This second part right here, while creating this experience in a student can motivate them on a temporary basis, that is discounted. Okay, so I don't know if you remember that part of the video lecture where I talked about how you can handle discounting, but we'll go through that in a second. But really, we've got one argument marker here, since. And I really think this argument is not very complicated. I think this argument is as simple as really this, and then there's maybe some bells and whistles we could add. But it's as simple as one claim supporting another claim. I think that's really just it. So, one claim supporting another claim, where one is saying something like, here, maybe I'll do this. Okay, so this is kind of what I'm thinking is how the standard form would look. The conclusion is we should avoid encouraging an expectation that education be exciting, or something like that. I'm doing a little bit of rewording and rephrasing from how it appeared in the original passage, but I think this is the basic idea. Remember, again, we're diagramming ideas, not English. We don't care as much about the English. We just want to capture the ideas. And I think this is the main reason that the argument's offering. If there's the expectation for education to be exciting, students may become insensitive to less exciting material that's still important. Some people split this up into saying students may become insensitive to less exciting material, and then as a separate claim, less exciting material can sometimes still be crucial. And if you put that together like 2 plus 3 that way, that's how you'd have to do it, because you need both of those ideas together to get the argument for one. But this, I think, is fine, just worded like this. Okay, so now if you wanted to get fancy, I think there is another argument to be had here. An independent reason for the conclusion, and this is going to be a kind of how we'd handle the discounting move. So I think we'd have another claim here. Let me make this a little bigger. Claim 3. So this is the thing I talked about in my lecture about how you can handle discounting by saying something basically like, discounting is always dismissing an objection, right? You could say the objection that we should make education exciting in order to motivate students fails. Okay, so I think you could put the claim like that. And then if we asked, is there a reason that they give us for how to support this claim, the answer is yes. There actually was something that they said to support that this is true. And I think it would look something like this. Here. Just something that simple. Temporary motivation's not good enough. I think that would be that's the kind of the logic here. Now all this stuff, 4 and 3, getting that in there, huge bonus points. The main argument is 1 and 2, I think, and if you got that, you would get most of the credit for this problem. But I think that this other objection is in there. While creating the experience in a student can motivate them on a temporary basis, you know, that's that we should still do this. So what's the underlying logic here? I think it's something like this. But even if you just got 3, that would have been fine. But you couldn't have just said something like, making education exciting can temporarily motivate students, because that doesn't fit in as an argument anywhere to support 1. So we have to reword these ideas to show the argumentative structure of what's taking place. Okay, so maybe something like this. Oh, and we would have had to place a if we did it the way that I'm showing in the diagram, then we'd have to do this, and we'd have to do this. Put a line between those premises and the conclusion. Okay, so that'd be like a full answer there for that first one. Alright, let's erase this and do another one. Okay, so now we've got this one here, the value of philosophy one. There's a couple different ways to skin this cat. And I'm going to show you one way, and if you want to talk to me about some other ones, that'd be fine too. But the ultimate conclusion here... Sorry, my microphone's being weird. Okay, stay there. Alright, can you hear me? You can hear me. There we go. Test. Yep, that's fine. Okay. So the main conclusion here is something like philosophy ought to be studied for the sake of its valuable questions. This seems to be the main point that Bertrand Russell's trying to defend. I mean, you could have put it a little differently. Like I was saying, different ways to skin the cat here. You might have thought that the main conclusion is just that philosophy should be studied, and that there's a way to do that too. I kind of like this way of doing it because I think this is really the thing that Russell's more invested in. He's trying to argue that there's a specific way in which we should study philosophy, and that's what he's going for here. And then really this problem doesn't have a lot of plus signs. There's a lot of independent arguments being offered here. But one thing that we could get at right away is that one reason why philosophy ought to be studied for the sake of its valuable questions is that philosophy should not be valued for the sake of it providing any answers to its questions. That is definitely a point that Russell cares about making. Yeah, let's make this look a little bit better. There we go. So that's a supporting reason for 1 that he gives us. And here's the fun part. There's a reason, and you've got an explicit argument marker to help you catch this. This is itself the conclusion of another argument. Why should we not study philosophy for the sake of its answers? Because no definite answers can be known. What a downer. What a skeptic. Not all philosophers feel this way, but there are some who do. No definite answers can be known. So that's a supporting reason for 2. So we'll put that in here in our diagram. And then we've got all these other reasons that Russell gives us. So studying philosophical questions can enlarge our conception of what is possible. That's one thing he says. That's something that it's valuable for. Studying philosophical questions I'm actually going to copy this because we're going to repeat it a couple times here. And then what else? Studying philosophical questions. Well, let's look at his language. What do we got here? I forgot. Enrich our intellectual imagination. Can enrich our intellectual imagination. Remember, I was telling you to not copy and paste, but that's just to be prepared to not copy and paste. If the original language is fine, that's fine. You don't have to reword everything. But some things definitely need to be reworded. Like in the last problem, we definitely needed to reword some things. So just always want to be prepared to do it, but that's just for the sake of clarity. What matters here is clarity of the ideas. All right, and then the final thing is diminished dogmatic assurance. Can diminish. I like to just say dogmatism. And maybe even diminish is a fancy word. We could just say can help resist dogmatism. That's great. That captures the idea that Russell's going for. Now 4, 5, and 6. These are all 4, 5, and 6. These no plus signs. No plus signs on these. They are all independent reasons for the conclusion. So we're going to draw separate arrows for each of them. All separate reasons. Okay, and then I think I'm going to stop it here because there's actually one more argument for the conclusion. But really, and this is all the stuff at the end where he's talking about above all because through the greatness of the universe which philosophy contemplates, the mind also is rendered great and makes possible that union with the universe which constitutes its highest good. That's, yeah, I don't know. Yeah, I've got some ideas of what he means by this, but giving you a philosophical exposition on what Bertrand means here is not important to being able to answer this question. You don't have to know Bertrand Russell's philosophy to complete this exam. I didn't want to make you do that. So really, what's going on here is sometimes in real life, you'll get an argument from someone. I was kind of alluding to this earlier. You'll get an argument and you'll be like, I don't really know what you're talking about. But I'm trying to make sense of your argument, so I'm going to start putting it into like little categories. I'm going to basically start diagramming it in my head to keep track of what's going on. Because, you know, imagine if you were in a conversation with Bertrand Russell and he dropped this. You might be like, okay, I'm following along. Okay, there's these arguments. I got this argument. Okay, I got these reasons here. Okay, and then, hey, you mentioned all this wacky stuff about this. I'm not sure I understood that. Or I'm not sure I understood what your reasons are for this or whatever. But putting some sort of place in your mind for it would be important to remember that it's a topic for discussion in evaluating his arguments. Be like, this is unclear. That's a problem. So trying to tackle it some way was important. And basically, as long as you went after it and tried to do something with it, I gave you credit for your courage. That's what we're looking for. So basically, however you handled that wackiness, I was going to be fine with. But you had to put something in here because there is something to go there. I mean, after all, Bertrand Russell is very clear that this is maybe the most important reason of what the truth of his conclusion. So definitely, as long as you put something in there for it, that would have been fine. Okay, so that's the exam. I also wanted to talk to you a little bit about how the makeup exam is going to go. So it's going to be another online quiz like this one that I'm going to give you 24 hours to work on, just like last time. But it's going to be set up into... actually, I'm probably going to separate it into a few different quizzes. So the quizzes, I think there'll be 2, maybe 3. I think it's just 2. I think the sections that I have material for... Oh, no, there's 3 sections. So I've got a makeup section for the short answer standard form problems. And then I've got another one for this stuff, for the all the linguistic analysis stuff with Gricean maxims and implication. And then for the last section, the annotating, standard form, and diagramming. Those are the 3 sections of the exam that you can redo. And I will make separate little quizzes for each of those modules. And you can take whichever ones you want to, and you can skip whichever ones you want to. But what I'll basically do is after you take the makeup quiz, I'll look back at your original score for that section of the exam, and if your new makeup quiz score is higher, then I'll give you fudge points equal to the difference. So I'll just fudge your original quiz grade, your original exam grade, to make up for that. So the quizzes will actually be worth, these makeup quizzes that I'm going to construct will be worth 0 points, and you will receive 0 points for doing them. But what I'll do is I will look at it, I'll make a comment too, I'll let you know how many points you picked up when I'm grading, when I put a 0 grade in for your makeup quiz. Okay, so this might look a little confusing. I can't make a separate makeup that replaces specific question scores on the original exam. I'm not that fancy with Canvas to be able to program it to do it. So I'm just going to kind of fudge it this way. So you'll still get a chance to answer similar questions as these sections on the original exam. I'll be grading them, and you will be getting the equivalent credit for your better answers if they are better. So that's how that will work. The makeup exam is not live right now, and I will make an announcement when I do make it live. So stay tuned to the announcements page for that. Please read those announcements. I've been getting some signals which makes me think that people are not reading my announcements again. So please do that. It'll be very helpful to you to know what's going on in the class. But the makeup exam, I just need to program it. I'm busy with a lot of other stuff going on this week, so I'm not sure it'll get on my to-do list on time. This is I'm recording this on November 6th, so I've got a lot of other grading going on with my other classes that takes a little higher priority. But I will get that up sooner or later, and then you'll have to the end of the quarter to complete it. So there's not going to be a little window here of opportunity. I want to let you take this at your convenience while you're working on, the new material for the next exam and all the other stuff that you've probably got going on in your life and in your other classes. So I thought I'd make that super flexible for you. Okay, if you have any questions about any of the answers on this exam or about anything on the makeup exam and how that's going to work, please let me know and I'll be happy to answer them. All right, stay tuned. I'm about to post, as of the time of posting this video, I'm going to be recording as fast as I can the material for the next module after logic, the one about inductive argument patterns. And this one, please follow it along because there's going to be a lot of video work that we'll have to do for it. So watch it as I'm recording them is probably my best advice. Okay, I'll see you then in those videos.